This is the Stress-Free Wedding Planning Podcast with Sal and Sam, a new podcast for engaged couples concerned about wedding planning and family expectations but want a stress-free, fun, and unforgettable wedding.
Hi, I'm Sal from After Hours Events of New England, the leader in making your wedding stress-free.
Hi, I'm Sam from Atmosphere Productions Disc Jockey Service. Experience the difference of a stress-free wedding with our extensive experience and the difference in quality.
Welcome to the Stress-Free Wedding Planning Podcast.
After you've asked about availability and price, what should you ask your venue? How about, what is the venue capacity? Is there a wedding the day before mine? When do you have to be out of the venue? What additional fees should I be aware of?
After listening to this edition of Stress-Free Wedding Planning, you're going to know and understand the answers to these questions.
With over 80 years of combined wedding experience and insider information, this is Stress-Free Wedding Planning with your hosts, Sal and Sam, a new podcast for engaged couples who are stressed about wedding planning and family expectations, but want to have a fun wedding. Listen now for revealing wedding insider secrets, tips, and strategy or lesson that you'll be able to implement for a stress-free wedding. Information that you just can't miss and may just change your life. Take the journey with us from worry and concern to a stress-free and unforgettable wedding day. The Stress-Free Wedding Planning Podcast with Sal and Sam.
In today's edition of the Stress-Free Wedding Planning Podcast with DJ Sam, that's me,
And DJ Sal.
we're going to go through a very important topic. Probably the biggest investment that you're going to make in your wedding day is booking your venue. And we've got about 11 to 12 topics that we're going to touch on. And bear in mind that some of these questions that we're going to go through, you have already discussed about pricing with the venue, about the caterer, about what other vendors. These are just some of those questions that a lot of couples forget to ask. So we wanted to make sure that you're aware of them. And remember, the space that you are going to rent, make sure it is sufficient for the guests that you're going to invite. Don't have a barn when you're going to invite 300 people,
Right.
And don't have a wedding facility that fits 1,000 people when you're only going to have 75. Those sort of things are just going to waste your money. So since we're talking about people, what's the first thing that we have to
And what is the capacity at the facility or wherever you're having it? And this is very important. You need to kind of know how many people you're planning to invite. You're going to lose probably about 15 to 20% of that.
And because of after COVID, maybe more.
Maybe even, yes, maybe even more. So these are things you need to know ahead of time before going into a facility, in my opinion, because as Sam said, if you have a place that could take 1,000 people, but you only have 200 people, they're lost in this big area.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't want that.
And the sound sounds like SHIT. A lot of clients don't understand that sound has an impact in the big space.
So I know when I do sound, especially for like a ceremony, someone will hear like, well, that wasn't perfect. I go, you're right, it isn't perfect. But once all the bodies are in here,
fills it
it's
up.
going to be right on point.
Yep. Is there a wedding party suite or getting ready room? Why is that important? It's important because the couple need a ready room, somewhere where even if they're not completely finished getting ready, they can do that touch up. Like the men, for instance, they need to put their boutonnieres on or fix their hair or fix their ties. Things like that. You need something like that. And you can't just do it in the parking lot.
You can't. And you do. This is another thing that's important is finding out the size of this room. Is it going to be able to accommodate
What you want to do.
what you want to do? Definitely. So there's some places that have these itty bitty rooms. And it's only enough for the couple. Like
And there's some
that.
places that don't.
Yes,
So if that's
absolutely.
important to you, make sure you ask that question.
Absolutely. Is there a wedding the day before or the same day in a different area?
And again, why is that important? Many facilities have 2 or 3 rooms, and you may have on the other side of your wall another wedding going on at the same time or slightly time shifted. Or it may be in a different part of the facility. Do you want to bump into another wedding party or guests or another bride even or another couple having their pictures taken? Do you want that?
I would think you would not. But, you know, there are facilities that do have it down to a science that they make sure that the two couples do not run into each other.
I can name several facilities who try to do that.
It doesn't always work out.
Work.
This is true.
There's a huge facility in Connecticut that used to have 4 weddings going on on a Saturday, especially when the days when we used to do weddings at 12 o'clock until 5,
And 7 o'clock,
and then 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock. For those of you not old enough to remember 30 or 40 years ago, that's how weddings were. They were lockstep into certain time periods, not only because the churches and synagogues did it that way, because the facilities did it that way. At this particular venue, you would run into 3 other brides.
Absolutely.
Because they all got married at the same time, and they all showed up at the same time.
And if you came early enough for pictures, you may even run into the one that's leaving. So so they literally did 8 weddings in a day.
Yeah. Those were the good old days. The next one is that you really have to ask is, can you choose your own vendors, or do you have to go from a preferred or exclusive vendor list? Why is that important?
Vendor lists are great if it's one of those things like, these are the people we believe in the most and we'd really like you to use them. It's not you have to use them. Anytime it's you have to use them,
that's a red flag.
There's a red flag big time. So it's like, who's paying into the system to make sure they get all these events? And typically the guys who are most reputable are not in a system like that.
Oh yeah.
So you need to be careful with that. So big red flag. You're told you have to have this person, you have to have that person. You may want to think about that for a little while and do some research on each one of those. You may not want to go to that facility.
But if they give you a list of vendors and it has 3 or 4 caterers, 3 or 4 photographers, 3 or 4 DJs, that's normally the way that most facilities will do their preferred or exclusive vendor list, and then you can choose from there. There's nothing wrong with that, except if you don't like the vendors that are on that.
But you don't have to use them.
But you don't have to.
So that's the great thing. You get to go outside that network, so that's not such a big deal. But you are getting multiple vendors for each category, so you have a good choice.
And the reason for that is because these vendors on this list know how to work at that facility and know the idiosyncrasies.
Yep.
And that's another reason why you should definitely have a video, a photographer, a DJ that all know each other.
Definitely.
Or have worked with each other in the past. Not to say that's a bad thing if they don't, but it means that you've got an A-team that all know how each other work, and things will definitely go along much smoother.
We have certain expectations of each other. We know what the other one's going to do, and it makes it so much smoother.
Really. Is there a coordinator on staff, and who'll be the main contact person? Now, this day and age with COVID, I have noticed that many of the coordinators are no longer at the facilities that I used to go to. And that's just a fact of life now. Again, in the older days, you could expect the wedding coordinator to be at a facility 3, 4, 5 years. Right?
Oh, definitely.
Before they change. Now, I go from season to season, and I don't even recognize not only the banquet staff, but the wedding coordinator.
You're lucky if you can make it through a season or even half a season. I know one place that's been through a few in 1 year, and it's just,
And that is an issue for couples, because you book the facility, and you speak with one coordinator.
You fall in love with them.
Yep. And then 6 months later, they're gone.
They're gone. And
you have to do all your work over again, because typically the wedding coordinator, although she may leave the information, some of those little notes that, I'll take care of that for you, are not documented. So just be very careful. And, one of our Wedding Tip Wednesdays says, go to your venue several times before you go there. So if you booked it in the fall, go there in the winter, go there in the spring. And there's another reason why you go there, not only to just look at the place, but to go see your wedding coordinator and find out who they are.
Are they still there? Let's not get this wrong. There are facilities who have been able to retain their people. I know there's people that I'm still working with that I've been working with for years, which is a great feeling. Because now, again, expectations. I know what they need. They know what I need. And it works out so smoothly that way. Not that you can't work with a new person. It is possible. But for the couple, I think it's harder because you fed information to one person. And now it has to be translated to someone else. And I can't read the other person's writing, so I don't know what they put in for the notes here. So here we go. Crazy.
So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about backup space, additional fees, cancellation policies. When can you come and set up? All those questions we're going to pose to you. And when we come back, we'll hopefully answer them.
There we go.
You're listening to the Stress Free Wedding Planning Podcast.
Wedding Tip Wednesday is brought to you by Emerge Cosmetics. Are you ready to emerge? A new line of luxurious lipsticks and lip glosses created with the intention of empowerment and coming into who you truly are. Strong, beautiful, and confident. Use coupon code EBI10 at shopemergecosmetics.com for an instant 10% discount. That's coupon code EBI10 for 10% discount at shopemergecosmetics.com. Emerge as the true you.
Happy New Year's, everybody! On this Wedding Tip Wednesday, the first kiss. Ask your photographer to capture your first kiss facing your family members and friends rather than facing the wedding officiant.
Now, we have to explain this one. What we're asking the photographer to do is stand in place of the officiant and take the shot of the couple kissing. So the background then would be the guest instead of the officiant. This is a great shot because it gets everybody in the picture and it's a much more family orientated shot.
Yeah, being a wedding officiant myself, I've always walked away from the first kiss. So when a photographer takes a shot, and it's usually towards us, they get only the couple. But this is such a great picture. If they just took the other end and walked into my space and just took that great big picture, and I think that's a better shot.
It is a great shot, and it's one of those shots that is going to go in the album because you get everybody that was at the ceremony. It's a great shot.
It's awesome. It's something you might even want to put up on the wall.
Wedding Tip Wednesday is available on the Stress Free Wedding Planning Facebook group page every Wednesday. Join the group for free.
Don't know what to do for your first dance? Is your future spouse having trouble picking a song to dance with their parent? Worry no more. I have the answer. Go to afterhoursevents.com/contact guest. That is CONTACTGUEST. And you'll be able to listen to hours of music to help you select the right songs for your upcoming wedding. Again, go to afterhoursevents.com/contact guest.
Do you want access to a stress-free wedding planning process? Then go to our website, allthews.atmosphere-productions.com, and get my free report. 8 questions you must ask a wedding professional before booking them. Get it today. That's allthews.atmosphere-productions.com. Look for the free report and learn to shop like a pro from a pro and go from concern and worry to stress-free wedding planning.
You're listening to the Stress Free Wedding Planning Podcast.
Welcome back to the Stress-Free Wedding Planning Podcast. And we just asked questions about the venue. We went over the capacity. We went over, is there a wedding suite? Is there another event that same day? And now we're going to pose a few more questions. Let's start off with, can you set up ahead of time? This normally reflects on venues that, you're able to bring in your own decorations, your own decor. Most wedding venues already set up. You don't really have to bring any decorations in. So this particular question is specifically for a certain type of venue. And the reason why you want to come in early is to set up those decorations. Drapes, if you want things hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah. So, if you're going into let's say a club or a hall that you're going to set up, you're going to want to beautify it. So you could do different things to really make it look nice. Yeah, lights, that could take some time to put up. Some people want to put up certain draperies or create flower walls or what have you.
Oh, yeah.
And not that this can't be done at a facility. Now, I do want to make it clear, if you're having a Thursday night wedding or maybe even a Friday night wedding, you might be able to come the day before. That might be a possibility if they don't have one the day before. So it's not impossible, but this is more, we're talking about the halls, things of that nature where you go in.
Or barns or outdoor facilities, tented facilities.
Exactly. So these are questions you have to ask and make sure it's clear on what you can and cannot do, because some places won't let you use certain things to hang things up with. So,
and we'll get to that one in a second. But the flip side of that is, when do you have to leave? You don't have to go home, but you do have to get up out of this place. So how long after the end of your event do you have to leave? Most facilities, I would say an hour to an hour and a half is the maximum they give us as DJs to pack up.
Yeah.
Usually it takes me half an hour, 45 minutes to pack up and break down and get the hell out of here. By that time, the guests have already gone. But there are times where I see guests, hanging around with a drink.
Never. That would never, ever happen. So, I know one particular place, their rule is you have a 3 o'clock setup time. Your ceremony has to happen by 5. You have to end at 10. everybody.
Yeah.
Not just the guests, but everybody must be out by 11.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as you know that.
As long as you're aware.
Up front. I can't tell you the amount of times I've spoken to clients and they said, "Oh, we're here till 11." And I get to the facility and we finish at 10.
10, yeah.
Where did the client get the idea that they were finishing at 11? I have no idea.
Oh, it's amazing. Well, you get what we call bride brain sometimes, and
Bride
you're
brain,
not really paying attention. You're just in the glory of what the space that you're looking to go with. So, yeah, very important. You have to worry about extra charges because I know a facility. It's a mansion. If you go overtime, guess what? That half hour is $400 because you didn't do it in time. So you don't want to pay that.
And let's explain what that fee is for. It really is for paying the wait staff because now that you've gone over, they have to stay to clear up. The tables don't get cleared and moved by magic. If you stay half an hour, 45 minutes later, the staff have got to be paid their hourly rate and they have to clear it up. And especially if they didn't know that in advance, that's an issue. So that's why they usually charge that you're whacked with that fee.
That's how they get you to stay within your time.
What you were speaking of before about the decorations, explain that to them. Because obviously you have to ask the questions, can I put decorations up on your wall or floor or ceiling?
Putting tape on a wall, sometimes even on a floor, is not allowed just because of what it could do. Because you're not usually using staging tape like we would use.
Exactly.
They use duct tape, which tears everything off, including the finish. So you need to ask all those questions.
You can't thumbtack,
yes.
Thumbtack, thank you, Sal. Stuff into the walls, again, for obvious reasons. You can't string lights in most venues unless you're doing a tented or an outdoor barn venue. That has to be okayed with the venue. So make sure that you can do these things.
Now, some venues have already kind of thought of things ahead of time.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the stringing of the lights. There are facilities who have screwed in these special hooks.
Yep.
So those are the hooks you have to work with.
Right.
And so now you need to know, you have to measure things out to make sure you have the proper length to make it work. But there are a lot of places that are doing that nowadays.
And if you've hired a decorator to put up, for instance, a hoopah, chupa hoopah. You have to make sure that is constructed either on site or beforehand, and it's done correctly, because you don't want halfway through your ceremony the thing fall down. Or if it's outside for the ceremony, for instance, that it is staked in correctly. All these things have to be okayed with the facility. And again, unless you're having a tented venue or in your backyard or something like that, your insurance will have to cover it.
Yes, absolutely. Also, a lot of places don't always allow flammable, meaning a candle.
Right.
So, what do we do?
Yeah.
You've got to buy the battery operated one. So you just need to be aware of what you can and cannot do.
Is there a backup space? That's the next question that you should ask.
This is huge, especially if you're having an outdoor ceremony. What happens if you have no cover and it rains or it snows? What do we do? So you need to make sure you have a backup plan, and it's a backup plan that you are happy with. Sometimes the backup plan is not the best thing that the facility may have, and you want to make sure it's okay with you ahead of time.
When I got married over 30 plus years ago, we got married in Wickham Park in Manchester, and we had no plan B. It was a Saturday in July, and we said we want to get married in the Oriental Garden with that great bridge in the background.
Yeah.
And we didn't care whether it rained or not, because we were going to be standing out there. You don't do that. Do not take advice from this DJ here, because he didn't do that. We didn't have a plan B. We were going to do it in the rain. We didn't have any electrical equipment. No, we had an acoustic vocalist that sang. So we just said, we're going to go ahead and do it. That's not the way to do it. Have a plan B so that you can have your guest covered from not only the rain, but from the sunshine. If you have a very hot, humid day and everybody's outside and they're dying from the humidity, have a plan B.
Yeah, that's a great point that you brought up. One thing, the acoustic guitar, in the rain, oh my. The humidity, oh my. So sometimes you have to just step back and go, I have to make the best decision for everyone.
Yes.
It can't be because I have to have this.
Yes.
I have had couples who have, it's drizzling, we're still going to go out there. Well, my equipment can't be out there. Two, your guest, are not going to be really happy about that. You don't want grumpy guests through the whole thing, because that's all they're going to think about is how you left them out in the rain, or, we're still going to have it outside even though it's winter. So what? It's, 35 degrees. It's like, well, you might be able to handle that. But how about grandma? Could grandma handle a 35, degree day?
And there's also something to worry about with your musicians. This is something that we do in a Wedding Tip Wednesday. Your musicians can't play if it goes under 65 degrees. I mean, they can play, but it's uncomfortable. If their hands get cold, they can't manipulate it against the strings if they're using string instruments. So you have to be aware of other people that are involved in your wedding reception for these reasons. The equipment, it can't be rained on.
It can't be rain. You have to worry about different things, not just the rain, but extreme humidity
has the same effect.
Bad, for those type of string instruments, especially.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't realize that.
They don't.
The importance of that.
It's like minus 35, and I want a string instrument playing for me outside, and I've got to have sound equipment. It's snowing.
Yeah, you got to remember, this is this person's livelihood. They cannot be messing up their instrument, because those instruments are not cheap.
And the same thing with the sound equipment.
Absolutely.
Additional fees is our next question. What additional fees should you be aware of?
Cleanup fees.
Oh, garbage.
Absolutely garbage. You read your contract and talk to the person who's renting the spot to you, because almost, I think every time is you have to take care of the garbage. And I've had a couple weddings this year that were outdoors, and they didn't realize they were supposed to hire a company to take care of the garbage. And like, what are we going to do with this garbage?
Yeah. And you've got to remember about cleanup fees for the tables and chairs. Is there a company coming back to pick these chairs up? And when are they coming? Are they coming Tuesday? So now you have to pay for Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday until they pick up. And can you even leave the stuff there? You may not be able to leave stuff. So all these other fees start creeping in. If you have to rent a space and bring all this stuff in, it's got to be taken care of. If you're in a wedding facility that does this all the time, most of that is already taken care of. You really only have to worry about overtime fees, and anything that you bring in, you got to take out. That's what you have to remember.
There's a lot of details on the outside of a facility type of thing. So you're going to need to make a list and make sure you go over it 3-4 times. Don't mess up, because you don't want to miss the smallest detail, because that small detail could become a very large detail later.
I can't remember in the old days when we did outdoor weddings and tented affairs, the couple would end up clearing the tables at the end of the event because they had to clear everything up before the end of the time. So you had the bride in her dress and she's cleaning up tables and taking tablecloths down, and obviously you got to plan ahead for this stuff so that you don't do that. Have somebody there that, even if you have to pay them, have them do that.
And something I would like to touch on is, the tent thing. You want to have side flaps too, just in case it does rain.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's another added expense, because typically that doesn't come with the tent.
Right. That's a fascinating point. We make so many assumptions about things. You think that a tent would come fully assembled. But no, side flaps are not included in that.
And always remember to keep your entertainment under the tent.
Yeah. And not outside the tent with the speakers inside somewhere. Yeah, I've been set up like that.
That doesn't work too well.
And then finally, our cancellation policy. Ask them, what's your cancellation policy? And what's your down payment schedule like? And I know Sal's going to jump in right away and tell us about down payments.
So, it works differently for a lot of different places. Some have just a set rate, no matter how much your wedding is going to be. This is what we're going to ask for. I am finding 35% to 50% is becoming more of a standard now, because it had to be, because how many people pulled out for no real reason sometimes.
Yep.
And there's usually a payment plan. So in other words, you've made your first payment. Now there's a second payment that needs to be made so many days before the wedding. So different places, different ways. So it might be 6 months before the wedding. You have to make another payment. Then 3 months before the wedding, there's another payment. And then your final payment must be paid the month of. And if you don't make your final payment, you don't have a wedding.
Yeah. And remember that if you skip up on any one of these, you're in default of that contract.
Yep.
And the facility has the right to give away your date.
And you could still owe something at the end, or it's just you're not going to receive any money back.
Right.
So be aware of your budget. You need to know that you can pull this off. Just keep in mind with every vendor you're working with, there's usually a payment schedule of some sort, and you need to keep it, because if you don't, you could lose them.
And pay particular attention to the cancellation policy as well. So if you decide to cancel, what are the fees? What do you owe the facility? Because it's not just easy as calling up and saying, hey, we're not having the wedding. Bye. No, there are some fees to do with that. And also, talking about your cancellation fee, find out what other supplemental fees may be added. For instance, because of the supply chain, we've had a lot of facilities have to go up on their pricing because beef wasn't available, or chicken wasn't available, or salmon went up in price. These are supplemental costs that the facility can add on because it's more than what they had factored in when they originally did the contract with you. And don't say, well, you did a contract, so you got to stick with it. That's why they write these contracts the way they do, in order to add.
In there.
Yes, because they have to cover themselves. Food is not free. It has to be purchased ahead of time, and it can't be purchased, when you book the facility. It's purchased the weeks before your event, and that's what the cost that they have to pay.
And I've had couples back, why do I have to pay this? They're not going to cook the food that day. Well, when are they going to use that food? They've already bought that food because you're that close to your wedding, and it's probably garbage now because who are they giving it to? They're not going to rebook your date now. It's too late. So that's a loss to the facility.
So we just went through some questions that you should ask your venue. Remember, these are the questions that you ask after you've asked the obvious questions like pricing. So make sure when you go to your venue, you pick the venue that you want. These questions are the ones that you should then ask and hopefully get the correct answers to.
You're listening to the Stress Free Wedding Planning Podcast.
Remember those questions I posed at the beginning of the edition? After you've asked about availability and price, what should you ask your venue? How about, what is your venue capacity? Is there a wedding the day before mine? When do you have to be out of the venue? What additional fees should I be aware of? These are important questions so that you can figure out if this venue is for you.
We shared with you exactly how to go about interviewing your venue. You also learned what it takes to start that journey of booking your venue and what actions you can take immediately.
Now, as you spend the next week planning your wedding, if you want me or Sam and our community of stress-free engaged couples and wedding experts to answer any wedding-related questions, join us over in the Stress-Free Wedding Planning Facebook group. Once you're in, go ahead and share your concerns and worries, and we'll let you know if you're on the right track or if there's something you should be working on. The link to join us is in the show notes of this edition, or go to Facebook and search for the Stress-Free Wedding Planning Community.
The Stress Free Wedding Planning Podcast is produced and copyrighted by Atmosphere Productions in association with After Hours Events of New England.